What's good, y'all? This is Maya's Job Podcast. We are on Maya's Print, and today episode is titled The Undervalued Benefits of Intentional Writing. And our guest today is Rex. He is a sex and relationship coach. Also, he has his own podcast. Let me see. I don't even remember the name.
Let's Talk Like Men.
Let's Talk Like Men. He's a co-host. And today he's going to tell his story, and we're going to get into the rest of it.
Yes, sir.
It's good, man.
Man, I'm blessed. How are you?
Good. I've been watching y'all podcast, and like the one thing I saw was you're into journaling.
Yes, sir.
And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I feel like we have something in common. And for me, I believe great minds don't think alike. They collaborate.
Yes, sir.
Because we definitely took different paths through our own writing experience. And I want to know about yours, like through journaling, because you also have 2 journals. They're on Amazon. Y'all need to go check that out. Let me not forget. One is Until Tomorrow, TMRW, and the other one is the 29-day self-discovery journal.
Yes, sir.
Y'all go ahead and check that out. But I want to get into your experience and your story behind it.
Right. So once again, y'all, guys, my name is Rex Howard Jr. I'm a relationship sex coach, personal development coach, marriage and family therapist, entrepreneur. You know, really just trying to do God's purpose.
Yeah.
But how I kind of stepped into it, man, I've kind of been a writer my whole life, right? And it's crazy because when I think back to high school, I used to write good morning texts. That was one of my biggest things. And I got so good at writing these good morning texts that a lot of my guys say, yo, bro, can you you send me something to send to my lady?
Yeah.
So I used to make these good morning texts there to send them out, and they're like, bro, she loves them.
Yeah.
And then I got to writing in early college, and I realized that the only thing I could truly write about and express myself was sexually. I used to write sex poems.
Yeah.
And it was cool. It was super dope at first. And then I realized, like, damn, this is the only thing I can talk about. This is the only way I can truly express myself, how I can truly tap in. So back in 2020 when COVID hit, God sat me down. He sat the whole world down, and he was like, it's time to heal, it's time to work, it's time to reflect.
Yeah.
So I'm starting my journey again, and I'm writing. And then I get to a poem called Dysfunctional Family. And if you don't mind, I would like to read it.
Go ahead. I want to hear it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I like to read it.
No, I'm big on poems.
It said, I've come to the realization that a lot of my problems and feelings that I have a hard time explaining stems from my parents' toxic traits. My parents had 5 kids by the age of 20. They were kids raising kids, trying to teach us what they were never taught. We grew up not knowing how to fully express ourselves because we were taught to shut up and get out of our feelings. We grew up not knowing how to properly communicate because all we saw was arguing and fighting. It was a constant battle between who was right and who was wrong. It was never, what's the problem and how can we fix it? It was hard talking to our parents about our problems because they were dealing with their own problems, trying to raise us, feed us, and work on their marriage. Growing up, we needed things that they couldn't give us because it was never given to them. It's hard trying to teach what you were never taught, and it's hard trying to stay afloat when it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Growing up, we knew and felt love, but it came in many different forms. Some love was shown by gifts, hugs, kisses, or really nice home-cooked meals, but most of it was tough love. We all have problems that stem from our childhood. Problems with expressing ourselves, problems with effective communication, problem with intimacy and love. We have some problems that we can understand and some that we can't. Those problems turn into habits, and those habits turn into addictions. We're all fucked up in some way, form, or fashion. It took me a while to figure this out, and now that I have, one thing is very clear. Although we grew up in a house, the older I get, the more I realize the house was never home. I'm a product of a dysfunctional family.
Whew. That was definitely a lot, but it definitely talks about everybody's experience who grew up in a dysfunctional family environment, which I can relate to that so much. And one thing I heard you say was proper communication.
Yes, sir.
Man,
Yes, sir.
Man, that's one thing I struggle with, and it actually like messed with my relationship as well. And then problems turn to habits.
Yep.
And when you hear a problem and habits, it's not a good habit, it's a bad habit actually that goes with it. And that's one of those things where personal development becomes a big thing.
Absolutely.
I got into personal development like 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I would say just now I'm really like getting into it because I think I started writing or journaling like in the 7th grade.
Okay.
It started with poems.
That's
I don't
good.
know why poems is like such a good thing, but like when you like music and hip hop, and then writing poems is kind of like there's a correlation.
Yes, sir.
So that's what I would do a lot, is write poems. And then I really got into writing throughout college, and then like 5 years ago.
Okay.
It all started with reading a book called The Way of Superior Man.
Yeah, I like that book.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah. I don't know what I did with it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to find it. But it got to a point where I'm glad I read that book before all the separation of gender wars came about.
Yeah.
Because had I not did that, I would have got sucked into the whole trend
Yep.
of what's going on right now. So I don't like it, but I do like the podcast you have, Traditional Man. And you mentioned something. I know you mentioned emotional intelligence, but you mentioned the 5 things of emotional intelligence.
Yes, sir.
And I picked up one.
Okay.
Because one is one that really stuck out to me, which is social skills.
Mm.
And what I figured out through journaling is that you have to write. And you have to find it as beneficial as possible, because that's where you get your social skills really from.
Yep.
Is writing a lot and then being able to speak, because when you write, you get to organize those thoughts.
Yep.
And then understand those fears and where they come from. Because believe it or not, a lot of black men like us, or anybody else who's black, and whoever's, dealing with those environments that we deal with, have PTSD.
Yep.
I definitely do.
Absolutely.
And I want to know, what are some struggles that through writing that actually helped you get through whatever you were going through? Because I know everybody goes through something.
Absolutely. So there's this quote that says, "When you are overthinking, write, and when you're underthinking, read." Right. So
Wow.
me, I'm an overthinker. So once again, it's when you're
Yeah.
overthinking, write, but when you're underthinking, read.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that always goes in my mind, right? I've been through a lot, but it wasn't until I started like 2020 when I really start reflecting on what I've been through. And it helped me get out what I was expressing. It helped me get out what I was feeling. It helped me get out what I was suppressing. And one thing that's going to help you do is help you get it from up here. Because if it's stuck up here, you're not going to know what to do with it. But if I get out on paper, I can work through it. I can conceptualize it. I can see where I went wrong. And every single time, God will put something on my heart.
Yeah.
And I'll write it down. So when I write, I don't just freehand. I always have a title. Right.
Okay.
So I remember 2021 when I first moved here. I live in the Woodlands, and I'm around a lot of white people. Right.
Yeah.
And
That's hard.
so at church, I was around white people. At my job, I was around white people. At the restaurants, and I had a title to a poem called "All White Everything," and I was like, God, where are my people at?
Yeah.
And it's really like this internal battle that I was having with myself. But like you said before, when it comes to communicating, if you know how to communicate with yourself, if you know how to write out your feelings, it's easy for you to express yourself to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's easy for you to conceptualize what you may be going through if you know how to write it out. But if you don't write it out, you don't share it with nobody else, and you keep it all inside, you're gonna drive yourself crazy.
Yeah. It's like shaking a bottle that hasn't been opened yet, and it's about to explode. That's kind of like how we are. Like,
Absolutely.
We go through a lot. I even noticed, like, with car rides or driving, because I had gotten a car wreck, I hate driving. Like, it gives me, like, I don't know, but it's Houston too. Like,
absolutely.
people cannot drive here. I also want to know, like, where you from? Because you said Houston.
So I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
from Knoxville, Tennessee. Went to school at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. That's where I graduated from in 2020.
Yeah.
When I moved home, the day I moved home, I got robbed at gunpoint.
Wow.
Robbed at gunpoint. Got everything stolen from me. That made me start back writing again.
Yeah.
Right. So because I had a lot of stuff I wanted to get off my chest, and then one day God said, "Houston is your home." So I took a 2-day trip to Houston. Got 2 of my guys. We drove 14 hours.
Wow.
Went to Houston during COVID. It was completely shut down, but I was like, this is it. So
Yeah.
I got back and I was asking God, I was like, okay, so what am I supposed to be doing? So as I'm working through my healing using this book called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, working through the workbook, God was like, since you did this for yourself, you can do this for other people. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to school for therapy.
Yeah.
So I applied to some programs and I said, if I get accepted, I'm moving. I applied. A week and a half later, I got accepted. I packed up my bags. I had $1,200 to my name. I owed my apartment complex $1,100, which means I had $100 left over.
Yeah.
My parents asked me, "Are you good? You got everything you need?" I said, "Yep." Because if I told them what I was really going through, they would have tried to make me stay.
Yeah.
Nah, God told me something.
Yeah.
I know if He told me, He's gonna make sure I'm straight as long as I'm willing to put in the work and have faith. So, man, I got down here in 2020, January, the last day of January, no, last day of December, going into the new year, and been rolling ever since. And writing has been a major part
Yeah.
of my journey. There's a lot of days where if I didn't have somebody to talk to, because I didn't move here with family or friends.
Yeah.
So my journal became my friend. And I would journal every single day. My thoughts, some days are good, some days are bad. Some days I would literally say, "God, please help me."
Yeah.
Because I had no other words. And then after a few weeks of me journaling, I start including at the end of my journal 3 affirmations, starting with "I am," "I can," and "I will." So with that being the case, was able to do that and make it happen.
So you never had to like go see a psychiatrist or anything like that to actually deal with the mental health issues
Yeah,
that
so
you're going through?
never saw a psychiatrist, but I did see a therapist.
Okay.
I did see a therapist, and I did have a personal development coach that I kind of had a conversation with. And then, so it was my journal, my therapist, and a coach that I had.
Okay.
And I had a lot of spiritual mentors as well.
Okay. Do you think like through all the journaling, like it allowed your ability to ask for help?
Absolutely.
Because that's a lot of those things where like in the Black community, it's like taboo to ask for help.
Yeah.
I understand it too, because when I was going through what I was going through, I was like felt it hard to ask for help, but I did have somebody in my corner, my uncle, who I was like going through a huge breakup, and with any heartbreak, you just don't have any real control because like you're used to something,
Right.
and now you're trying to get up out of it,
Right.
and like start your new journey. And mine's kind of like yours, where I was journaling a lot, and it was like don't go back home. You have somebody that truly needs you as your son. And I spent most of my time like I had Airbnb, of course, but it was like do it, just do the Airbnb work. Now I'm a teacher now, but I was like in that time I was like showing up every day
Right.
as a teacher, just showing up because it was something I wanted to do, and it opened doors for me. But at that time, like I was really trying to like stay focused on my mental health. I did see a therapist,
Okay.
but it just didn't help me too much. And one thing I figured out that I love the most is like a goal and trying to accomplish it.
Right.
I feel like God was speaking to me in that term where he was like, well, goals, that's what you need. That's what you need, because that's really what's pushing you to keep going, to keep moving forward.
Right.
And that's all I would focus on, is writing my goals, figuring out how I'm gonna accomplish them. Now I'm starting to settle in myself of like wanting to have a relationship again.
Right.
It's been like 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
But now I understand myself more because I wrote so much of like what I feel, how I feel, what type of expressions I want to convey to somebody as far
Right.
as body language. Because nonverbal is what somebody will pick up from you more than your verbal.
Right.
Because they can say, listen to somebody's words, but pay attention to their actions a lot more.
Right.
Because that's what shows. So I found out like about myself and how important communication is. It's actually more important than money
Right.
will ever be. Because you got, like, for me, I got to think about it. Like, when you're trading money, there's still communication going on. You wouldn't do business with somebody who has bad business practice, but the only way you find out is through communication.
Right.
So my thing is for you, like, as far as relationships, how often do you pay attention to body language? And do you understand yourself enough for your body language to actually get somebody to understand like that you can they can trust you?
Right.
How
So
would you go about that?
So, like I said, you mentioned something about emotional intelligence earlier, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple different parts. You have self-regulation, self-awareness, empathy, motivation, and social skills.
Yeah.
But the part that you just touched on is self-regulation and self-awareness.
Yeah.
When somebody says something to me that's triggering, there's the way that I'm going to react. I'm going to want to defend myself, right? I'm technically stepping outside of my window of tolerance. So now I'm like, okay, I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
Once I feel that, that's my self-awareness, but my self-regulation is my ability to calm myself down or step away from the conversation. So when it comes to relationships, yes, I pay attention to body language. When it
Yeah.
comes to being a therapist and people sitting across from me, I pay attention to twiddling of the fingers. I pay attention to knee popping. I pay attention to their breaths. I pay attention
Yeah.
to if they can look me in my eyes or they continue looking away,
Uh-huh.
right? Because it's so crazy. Um, it's either left or right. But if you're talking to somebody and they're starting a conversation with you and they look up to the left, that means they're coming up with a lie.
Oh wow.
Right. So it's left or right. It's one of those two ways. But I pay attention to body language, major, and especially when it comes to in relationships.
Mm. Cause, and the reason I brought that up because one day I was I like to take my son to these little indoor parks, right? And I'm like the only black person in there, so it was very, very, very odd. But what calmed me down was I started writing about like how I was feeling, the experience, what my son was experiencing.
Right.
And you know, kids are young, they don't see color, so he had a better advantage than me.
Right.
And I'm like, why? I'm questioning myself while I'm writing. I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I just not observing the room? Remember they say read the room?
Right.
And so that came up, and I'm like, well, read the room. Start looking at people. You ain't gotta like stare at them like the whole time, but just observe everybody and see what their body language is like, what their body language is like when my son goes by,
Right.
and see how it is. And it was really like, oh, this is made up in my own mind.
Right.
This is something that I was given as a kid. You know, don't like. It was kind of like segregation in a way.
Right.
And I wonder, like, your experience with, like, you said, Woodlands, where are my people at?
Right.
I know how that feels. It's so, man, it feels like the movie Get Out
No,
sometimes.
no, I said this before to one of my guys.
Yeah.
Um, it's almost like you have to constantly be conscious of the fact that you're black.
Yeah.
Right. So in a lot of spaces when it comes to being in the woodlands and being in an apartment complex where there's not many black people, or going to church, there's not
Yeah.
many black people. I went to a
Yeah.
Bible study one time, a men's small group. It's normally about 10 guys. And they invited me to a bigger group,
Mhm.
which consisted of all the Bible study groups, all the one.
Yeah.
It was 600 guys, and I was the only black male.
Mhm.
And not to say I was uncomfortable, but I definitely felt kind of weird because when
Yeah.
you walk in, everybody's looking at you like, what's he doing here?
Yeah.
Right.
It feels that way.
It,
Yeah.
so I'm definitely always conscious of what I'm feeling, but I'm always conscious of what other people may be feeling towards me. When I'm walking into the elevator and there's somebody's already there, how they look. When I'm walking into the door and somebody's walking out, do they jump or do they get startled?
Yeah.
Right. If I'm walking my dog and it's cold outside and I have my hood on and I'm passing people, I'll take my hood off so that I can feel like less of a threat.
Yeah.
I don't have a threatening face, but I just want to make sure that people feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been a very, very big thing for me.
Hmm. That's something I became aware with too. I wouldn't say it bothers me, only because even for myself, I want to feel safe anyways.
Right.
So it comes down to like, what would you want for yourself
Right.
in that situation?
You
'Cause
said
even
you
for
wouldn't
me,
feel safe.
yeah, even I wouldn't feel safe. If somebody had a hoodie on and
Yeah.
I couldn't see their face, and let's say it's dark outside, I'm automatically like,
Yeah.
because I mean, growing up, I mean, if you in a bad neighborhood, even
100%.
it's kind of like, I don't know you, and I don't want you behind me because it's dark outside. So
Right.
that's like common sense. But even in like situations where like it may feel safe, but because I've been taught or programmed in a certain way,
Yeah.
I still have to think that way, and I hate that.
Yeah.
And I would say you probably feel the same way, even if it feels like a safe situation. I want to know, like, how would you get around that?
Right. Um so I
'Cause-
grew up in an impoverished community,
yeah.
right? I grew up where there was a lot of violence, there was gang banging, people arguing,
Hmm.
people getting robbed, people getting shot.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends been in jail, a lot of my friends have passed away, right, due
Yeah.
to violence. So my body already gets dysregulated, and when I step into communities that are familiar with my childhood,
Yeah.
and I automatically go into fight or flight mode.
Yes. Exactly.
There's that heart rate. I become more
Uh-huh.
more alert, more aware of everything that's going on around me.
Yeah.
And when I'm in those situations and I feel that, I ask myself two things: am I really in danger? And is this a place I need to be in?
Mm.
So that's another reason why I was okay with moving where I moved to, because of safety,
Yeah.
because there was a lack of violence, because so there's a lot of work that needs to be done when you're dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, my parents used to always say, um, don't go asking no white people for no help, right?
Yeah.
Keep everything in house. But one thing I realized is a lot of secrets were kept in house. A lot of things
Yeah.
that people were struggling with was kept in house. A lot of things that, financially or just abuse was kept in house. So we were scared to go say something to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of resistance to go speak to somebody in the first place.
Yeah.
But once I finally did,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell them, okay, this is what I experienced as a child. This is what I experienced after I got robbed. I was paranoid. I was anxious. I was always clutching my gun to the point where I had to start leaving my gun at home because I felt like I was going to use it when it
Yeah.
wasn't appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that being the case, I had to go sit down and talk to somebody and say, this is what I'm feeling. And then I had to build upon my self-regulation techniques and coping skills because of a therapist and through a therapist.
Yeah. Mm. Oh yeah, I definitely need to go see that then, because
Yeah.
I feel like I've I've been in the military bro my whole life, so it doesn't feel like I've been in any type of danger my whole life. But
Right.
also, my grandma did live in a impoverished community where it's like gangs were present,
Right.
obviously, and then school had gang violence too. And I didn't become aware of it until like I actually had to deal with it myself.
Right.
Like Houston, obviously, you gonna deal with road rage. You gonna deal with people that are like crazy for whatever reason. But I ran into that situation where I felt like, oh, this guy's about to pull a gun out on me because I'm driving the speed limit. He not.
Right.
So instantly, I felt in danger. And then like even in school, like I don't know why, but like they're big on like, oh, you gotta be careful with school shooting, this, that, and third, because security is not like huge in schools too
Right.
much. And I can't even turn my back. I'm like, yo, why do I feel some type of way if I turn my back towards the students? They're not gonna do nothing.
Right.
And then if they're like too loud, or if I hear like loud screaming outside, I'm gonna be like, is there something going on? I go open the door every time. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I'm like,
Paranoid.
yo, am I paranoid or do I have like some form of PTSD? And I think that is
Right.
because of my upbringing. And then I want to talk about like your relationship. How do you basically how do you communicate your upbringing to your significant other
You know, it's
in a
very
way where it
interesting.
doesn't seem like they should feel scared or you
Right.
know
So we had a lot of conversations, and I had to be very
yeah
honest. We have, my lady and I, we have two different upbringings,
yeah
right? First of all, she's Nigerian, so she comes from a different culture.
mm-hmm.
They're very um, interdependent on the family,
yeah
and I'm independent. I don't
mm-hmm.
necessarily depend on my family too much because I left the
yeah
house really early. Um, But you just got to sit down and have that conversation.
yeah
And I kind of told her, like, this is the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. This is the kind of lifestyle that I live.
yeah
This is how my parents raised us. This is the kind of consequences that came behind not doing the right thing. This is what I was exposed to, right? This is the type of
yeah
relationships that they had within the home. So, and you kind of want to do both, right? You don't want to scare them, but you don't want to not let them know who they're dealing with.
yeah
So I always let her know, excuse me. I said, my people aren't bad people. They're not going to cuss you out. They're not going to harm you. They're not going to put you in dangerous situations.
yeah
But we all grew up the same way.
yeah
So a lot of us have dysregulation skills. A lot of us do speak too loud or do speak aggressive in a certain sense.
mm-hmm.
Um, but as long as you are the person that's done the work, because I had to make sure I did the work in order
yeah
to have my partner.
mm-hmm.
Because who I
Correct
was a couple years ago wouldn't have been able to sustain this relationship. Who I was a couple years ago wasn't able to have the communication skills to be in this relationship. Who I was a couple years ago would I wouldn't say I would have found a way to self sabotage the relationship, but I wouldn't have been the man that she needed,
yeah
right? The man
correct
that
correct
God had already called me to be. So that's kind of how I would answer that.
yeah that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm at right now. Where I'm like, I'm already thinking like, okay, I do want a relationship. I'm like, I can't be in a relationship if I don't understand how to lead myself into
Yeah,
the right direction,
facts.
and I don't know how to lead myself mentally in the right direction.
Right,
Because for me, it's like, okay, we talk about men having money, but money just can't be the end all be all. Because I also saw in one of the episodes, it was like, you can't lead with money. It has
Right.
your family needs more of you than just your income.
Absolutely.
And I saw it, and I was like, damn, that's so right. I've known a lot of people that have a lot of money and just couldn't get the marriage part right because they led with money only
Yeah.
rather than leading with themselves,
Yeah.
knowing that they're the prize.
Yeah, they know how to be a provider. They don't know how to be a father. They don't know how
Yeah.
to be a husband. They
Mhm.
don't know how to be present.
They don't know how to lead in God, lead
So
with God.
one thing
So
I would say is, I have a program coming up that I
yeah.
help men do that, and I like to help men figure out things that keep them stuck.
Mhm.
What's keeping me stuck? When I get into relationships, what are the patterns that I'm doing that's making me lose these people?
Yeah.
There's a question that I always pose is, if you had to explain why your relationship ended and you could not bring up your partner, what would you say? And
Wow.
it makes you self reflect. It makes you say, well, I got anxious oftentimes. I was overthinking. I had trust issues. My communication was kind of terrible. I used to hang up the phone when I didn't get my way. I wanted sex more than they wanted sex, or
Yeah.
I focused on my pleasure more than they focused on their pleasure.
Mhm.
And then I didn't get a better understanding of my triggers. Like, for
Yeah.
example, I was following people on social media that was causing problems in my relationship. I was having conversations with past partners that I shouldn't have been talking to, right?
Mhm.
I was engaging in conversations if I was drinking and not allowing myself to kind of pull back.
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself, what's keeping me stuck?
Mhm.
What are my triggers? What are the things that are in me that I'm showing that's going to affect my new relationship? What's stopping me from fully being honest? What's stopping me from being transparent? What's stopping me from being vulnerable?
Yeah.
What's stopping me from trusting the new person? Right? So unless you address those things, you'll never be able to show up for a person how you want to, because you don't even understand yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, I could definitely all those things you mentioned, I definitely became aware of those things. Like being anxious, being triggered. How am I being triggered? Am I able to show that without having to speak on it?
Right.
Like my facial expressions have became very expressive over the past years. Like people even know like if I'm disgruntled or something without me speaking.
Right.
That's why I became like real big in body language. But yeah, I could say anxious, overthinking, um certain triggers that I didn't speak on because I didn't think they were just triggers. And then also because as a man you don't speak on those things,
Right.
right? So
But
that became a big thing
yeah,
too.
but you have to.
Yeah, you have to.
Because once again, it's not your partner's responsibility to fix your triggers. It's your responsibility to acknowledge your triggers and to communicate those triggers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And have a conversation. You can never expect somebody to accommodate for you if you're not willing to communicate.
Yeah.
And also when it comes to writing and relationships, and prepare preparing for your new relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you need to write about what kind of husband or father you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of woman that you need in your life. But it's also part of finding your purpose, right?
Yeah.
Because if you find your purpose, you can find the right woman that aligns with that purpose. And I remember when my last relationship ended, right? I wrote this poem or this thing called Learning How to Love Again. And I want to share a little bit. Mine.
Yeah.
All
Go,
right.
go, go.
So it says, the phase of life that I'm currently in is unlearning phase. Everything I was or thought I knew about relationships has shifted. Even the things that I thought I wanted and needed in my relationship have shifted. I'm used to a love that's dysfunctional and chaotic. I'm used to a love that's aggressive. I'm used to a love that brings out the best and the worst in me. I'm used to a love that leaves me wondering whether or not all of this shit is even worth it. I'm used to a love that feels like home. But the crazy thing is, I never like staying home for too long. I like having access to home, but it's not a place I like to be for too long. And I said, um, I never allow myself to get too deep. I've always been drawn into those kind of feelings, but it never works out for me. That's why I have to learn how to love again. I want the kind of love that's soft and easy. I want the kind of love that feels safe and supportive. I want the kind of love that loves me back and doesn't leave me feeling like I'm less than. I want the kind of love that feels right and that's in alignment with what I need back in return. I want the kind of love that lasts forever. I want the kind of love that keeps me coming back home and makes me excited to come home. I want the type of love that doesn't come with anxiety, anger, or depression. I want the kind of love that doesn't need to be fixed or corrected. I want the kind of love that I can learn from and I can pour back into. I want the kind of love that is warm and peaceful. I want the kind of love that I can feel safe to start a family with. I want the kind of love that God endorses and allows to flourish. I want the kind of love that's there when things aren't so pretty and when I'm not the easiest to be with. I want the kind of love that adds to my happiness. I want the kind of love that gives other people hope that this type of love even exists. That's the kind of love that I want, and that's the type of love that I will have. And I always signature it off with my name.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of have me having these conversations with myself and me having these conversations with God saying, this is what I'm used to, but this is what I need in my life. But in order for me to bridge the gap, I need to continue to become the person that can sustain this type of love.
Yeah,
So I think that's a big thing.
that's true. That is true. Um, Dang, bro, you wrote. Wow, bro, you writing. For me, I'm just trying to like write, and then I work backwards. I
Okay.
noticed that too. I work backwards so much in like a lot of things, and I wonder why. I'm like, why I accomplished this goal, but how?
Right.
Because I wouldn't say I work backwards, but I feel like I do,
Okay.
and it's very like unorthodox to a lot of people. Cause like even with my ebook, I'm gonna speak on that.
Okay.
When I was writing it from like one part was in the middle. Then when I was writing the middle part, I was like, I was thinking it was gonna be my introduction. It ended up being my third chapter.
Right.
And then whatever I wanted to write for my third chapter ended up being the introduction. I was like, I'm so confused.
Yeah.
And so I had to go to my journal and write. And I was figuring out like a lot of things that I was doing or a lot of things that I was trying to come up with as a kid was always that way.
Right.
It was like I worked here, I worked there, and then I worked somewhere in the middle, and then finally put something together. Sometimes the steps that we take in life are like that, and that's what I was figuring out for myself. Cause I'm an overthinker too,
Right.
and I'm like thinking like I wrote it down this way. I'm trying to do it this way, but life just be life and like.
Right.
You don't ever get to do it this way. Sometimes it brings you this way. Like God has a way of shuffling the cards for us, and we have to deal with the cards we were dealt.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like the podcast for me, it could be therapy sometimes, but it also could be like, okay, well, the way this person think is because they wrote so much about who they are
Yeah.
and find out who they was that's their process.
100%.
And that's how they're gonna go.
100%.
In the world, this is why I say like the benefit of intentional writing is so undervalued because everybody's on social media and thinking that's how their life should go.
Yeah.
Instead of really taking the time down and becoming an author of themselves.
Right.
And that's how you become a better public speaker and communicator. Like we have so many people that are probably gifted public speakers,
Yeah.
but because they want to be like somebody else's social media, they don't ever get to have that chance
Right.
and give grace to the people in the world.
And put things out on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring it to life.
You got it. But one thing I would say to your point, it's okay to work backwards, but
Yeah.
you just need to write out your process.
Yeah.
Understand your process, write out your process, and say, this is what works for me. Because I'm in the process of writing a couple books, and I will say I start and I stop and I start and I stop and I start and I stop.
Yeah.
But what I do know is when I'm writing,
Uh-huh.
I write out everything that I want to say because you can correct it on the back end.
Yeah.
I write out everything I want to say. I write out the process of my thinking. I write out what's the best times for me to write, the best settings for me to write in, what mindset I need to be in to write in. Do I need to pray before I write? But I just truly just write out your process so you can kind of know it.
Yeah.
And that's another way that me and Miles and we break down our podcast. We have a conversation. We say, you know what, let's do a leadership series. On this episode, you're going to have 3 points. I'm going to have 3 points. And then we break down our outline. And when we have our outline, all we do is have 1 or 2 sentences. And then when we get here, we can talk because of life's experiences, because of what we've been through. And we also read a lot. I'm currently right now reading 3 different books. So when I read, I take sticky notes.
Yeah.
and every part that means a lot to me, I rewrite it in my own words on that sticky note and slap it on the page. So now when I get to a podcast and something comes up, I'm able to restate what I read because I rewrote it, and now it's sticking, right? And then you go from taking all the sticky notes to transferring it over to a Google Drive. Once you got it on the Google Drive, now you have a list of all your quotes, of all your points, of all your statements that you want, and you just rehearse them and rehearse them and rehearse them.
Wow.
So when you get on a podcast or you get in front of an interview or whatever the situation may be, it rolls off the tongue. They're like, "Damn, you came up with that?"
Right.
And that's exactly that
Oh, wow.
process.
See, I read a lot of books too. I'm reading like 3 as well. I was like, dang. I kind of felt weird reading 3 books, but now that like you saying, I feel a lot better. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one to be highlighting and stuff.
Knowledge is power. The more you read, the more you can give, the more value you have, the more you can become the most interesting person in the room. Because at the end of the day, you think about not many people expect black men to be
They really don't.
intelligent,
Yeah.
right? To be able to add value to a conversation.
Yeah.
Especially when you dress casual. I wear this at the office when I'm seeing clients.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't who I was, this
It
wouldn't have been
work.
appropriate.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
They would expect
Okay.
from being in a suit and tie. But because I know how to articulate my words, because I know how to take you from point A to point B and help you understand everything in between, it makes sense and I'm not questioned.
Yeah. Okay. I gotta try that. The sticky note, 'cause I highlight and stuff. And for me, it came to a point where I was like writing about the books I read, and I was like, it doesn't count that I actually read it if I don't have any sticky notes or highlighting in that book.
Okay.
Because I can't go back and refer to a blank page.
Right.
Like to me, if I never highlighted anything in that book, it's a clean slate. It's like I never read it because I don't have any highlighted ideas or anything that I can take from it. After I read it. So to me, it's like I never read those books ever.
I feel that. So what I do is 2 things.
Yeah.
One is after I read, when I'm and in the process of reading a book, I make a note section in my phone. Right? Make a note section in my phone for that specific book. So for example, you talked about the book The Way of the Superior Man, right?
Yeah.
I read that book and I took notes on each chapter. So I go back and do it like this. Or what I do is when I read, I will, at the end of each chapter, I will take the main thing that I learned and then I will make a journal entry for it.
Okay.
For example, this right here says reflection. The question was, do you see any evidence of emotional enmeshment or triangulation with one or both of your parents? And I just reflect on it. And that's how it sticks for me as well. So not only am I reading, learning new information, I'm also going back to history and learning more about myself because of what I read.
And that's really how history is made, through writing. People don't understand that. Like, that's very important.
Right.
And people always talking about leave your kids behind a house or a car or generational wealth. But what about
Knowledge?
Yeah.
Wisdom. Yeah.
Nobody's talking about it. But like, it starts by being a writer. Like, I feel like people don't value it enough, but the fact that we talking about it, I think people will value it more because they're like, okay, that's why you write.
Absolutely.
You write to learn.
Right.
You write to leave something behind. You write to give people knowledge, the ones that's gonna come after you.
Right.
Like, you got grandkids, great grandkids, great grandkids, like people that's gonna be after you. So it's like, it makes sense. It made sense to me when I was doing that. That was one of those reflections when I was writing. I was like, so why do you want to really write?
Yeah.
Why are you truly writing? And my biggest goal was like to have a art museum journal section, like my own art museum, and then have a journal section of like all the journals I've wrote until I died.
That's good.
And it's like, what's gonna happen because I did that?
Yeah.
I'll be able to write multiple books, have so many ideas that somebody can catch on to. 'Cause that's really what these scientists or whoever they are, like, that came, really did for other people. People read about them and got ideas from them. I think that's really what it's all about, and that's where the true wealth is, in communication all day.
And think about how much knowledge and wisdom your son or your kids will have after reading your writings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once, you know what I'm saying, let's just say you in your will you said, I want my son or my kids to have all of my journals. And
Mm-hmm.
when they get to the point where they're ready to have those conversations or they're ready to read and they can conceptualize what's going on,
Yeah.
they can do that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give everybody that's listening a gem for relationships.
Okay.
So every month on our month anniversary, me and my lady's month anniversary, which is the
Mm-hmm.
12th of every month, I write her a letter. And it's typically like a 1 page letter. And I kind of go over how I'm feeling about her, the highlights of the month, things I plan on doing, and I kind of talk about the future. And every single month, if I don't write it on piece of paper, I write it on a Google Doc and I send it to her via email. So last month, no, really on the 12th of this month, we just reached our 1 year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So now she has for our first year 12 letters that I wrote her,
Oh wow.
and she can look from month 1 to 2 to 3 and how we've progressed.
Mm.
So that's definitely a gem. And women, even men, we love
Yeah.
listening and words of affirmation, but women love that.
Yeah.
So if you can get in the habit of writing her notes, I even did this one thing where I gave her 3 affirmations, and I wrote it on a sticky note and I hid it on her visor in her car.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime she goes to look at herself in her mirror, she sees the sticky note and she sees those affirmations. So even if she's having a bad day or not feeling too confident in herself, that's just a reminder of how my person or how my partner feels about me.
Mm. Wow, that's way better. I think that's a very thoughtful gift
Mm-hmm.
that I think it's gonna be set that impression, like you said, the sticky notes with writing and everything.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's really how people remember things is that you write them down. They can always refer back to them.
100%.
It keeps the relationship strong.
Every single time.
And I realized, like, when I used to write, if I couldn't articulate my words, like just speaking right off the bat, if I could write them down, it would have done me more, like, it would have done me more good
Yep.
than bad at that point. Um, Also, I wanted to touch on like the sex poems you were writing back then.
Mm-hmm.
Was that just because of like puberty, or was that like
Mm-hmm.
something you were interested in? Because you're also a sex coach.
Yeah. So it was who I became.
Yeah,
That was
he said, "Who I became."
it was who I became. So on the last episode, I discussed this, but I was exposed to porn at a very early age, 5 years old, right?
Hmm.
Never had the birds and the bees talk.
Yeah, correct. Same here.
Being at the
Crazy.
house and just being around older adults, I used to hear
Mm.
uh, people having sex, the moans and
Wow.
the groans, right? As a kid, right?
Yeah.
And then so you have that combined with the pornography, combined with the pressure from the men in the neighborhood, like the people I grew up around, saying you're not a man if you haven't had a wet dream, if you haven't gotten some
Right.
head, or
Correct.
this, that, and the third. So it was my journey to go
Hmm.
be a man.
Yeah.
Right. So in that process of going to go be a man, I'm jumping out and I'm having sex before I truly know the power of it, what it can do for you, what it does to the brain.
Yeah.
And it became something that I became addicted to. Right.
Yeah.
The feeling of it, the feelings that came from it, the power that it gave me, the influence that it gave me, and the way it made people look
Hmm.
at me. Right.
Yeah.
And then I got to the point where if I didn't want a relationship with them, my whole purpose was to make them fall in love with me through what I did for them or through how I made them feel
Hmm.
sexually. So I got to the point where I gave myself an alter ego, called him Rexington. At first, it was just a joke. It was just a joke.
That's funny.
Um, and then like it became a thing.
Yeah.
If you're a spiritual person, one would say it's a demon,
Hmm.
right? Because when I started drinking, it'd be a switch.
Right.
It'll be a switch. So I wrote from the perspective of Rexington about
Okay.
my addictions, about what I wanted, about. I remember one very vivid poem said, "It's always a race to the finish line. Will you get your nut first? Will I get mine? I aim to please, and I never disappoint. I'm not with many games. I get straight to the point. I'm nothing like what you're used to, so don't compare me to your past. I always make sure you come first, and I finish last."
Mm.
And anytime I would show somebody that, they'll
Yeah.
be intrigued. It's like, what that mean? Damn, you always make sure they come. What? So
That's
I
it.
will write these things for power. I'll write these things for influence. I'll write these things from the perspective of if I show somebody this poem, they're going to see what I'm about.
Yeah.
So that's what that was for me. So I continue to write and I got a better understanding is I didn't fall in love with people. I fell in love with the feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't fall in love with people. I fell in love with the words of affirmation that I got back. And then I realized that throughout my writing, this is producing no fruit for me.
Mm-hmm.
My none of these women are gonna be my girlfriend because that's not what I want from them.
Yeah.
I'm being drained because I'm pouring way too much into them. I'm getting to the point where I'm confused and my energy is low and I'm feeling depressed and I'm feeling isolated.
Yeah.
It just wasn't working. So I continued to write. And as I wrote, that's when I wrote Dysfunctional Family. And after I wrote the Dysfunctional Family poem,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like things shifted for me.
Yeah.
And then I started writing about the person that I wanted to become.
Mm.
Right. And I want to share with you one more poem
Go ahead. Go ahead.
that I wrote during that time. That I wrote during that time about who I was, and this is a better representation. And it's
Okay.
called let me see, could you handle it? Late night thoughts. Letter to my past, demon, acceptance. Um Dysfunctional family. Let's see about this. Let me see my heart, my feelings. Broken child. Is that it? No. Let me see. Where is it at? You know what? I really can't find it. I don't really want to waste too much time trying to look for it either. But I would say it put me in a position to see myself for me, and it made me understand more who
Uh-huh.
I was as a person, the person I was, the person I wanted to be, and I just wanted to bridge that gap. And I knew that in order for me to have the things that I wanted, to be in a successful relationship, to be in my career, to be walking in my purpose, I had to kill that side of me.
Mm.
Right. It's either
Yeah.
kill it or accept it. But if I accepted, I had to accept all the bad that came with it. So a part of it was acceptance, but a part of it was dying to my flesh and then also letting that part of me go so I can
Mm-hmm.
step into the person God wanted me to be.
Isn't that Book of Romans?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know exactly,
Yeah.
but I used to read Book of Romans. It said, "Be ye not carnal minded, but be ye spiritual minded."
Hmm.
And so that's I still remember that 'cause I used to read that verse every single day, along with James. Faith without works is dead, and work without faith is dead.
Yep.
So when I actually started my journey of celibacy,
That's amazing.
I had to put it away. It actually started last year in May, so April gonna make a whole year.
Yeah.
But it was crazy how I actually got through it. But the only reason I got through it because those words I ate it like it was flesh
Yep.
years ago, and now it's starting to manifest themselves of walking in spirit. But the only way to walk in spirit is to be celibate
Yep.
and having the control of that lower self of man,
Yeah.
which is to think with your penis and
Yeah.
everything instead of thinking with your mind.
Yeah.
But if you start to think with your mind, you will start to realize that those things that you were gravitating towards was a thing of the flesh rather than the mind. See, the mind is of God.
Yep.
That's why man must be up here
Yeah. One.
rather than down here. The
Yeah.
woman is the body, the man is the head. And people don't understand that too much. It's all supposed to be in spiritual context rather than carnal context or fleshy context.
Absolutely.
And it took me a while to get to that point, but I also had to learn to read and be able to comprehend because schools don't necessarily teach us how to read
Mm-mm.
really or put too much time into it. And I actually had one student who actually made me understand like the how truly writing is undervalued. He was like, "Mr. Powell, all we got to learn is writing and reading. That's all we really need to know." And I was like, I couldn't even combat him on it. I was like, "You're right. That's probably the smartest thing you'll ever say in your whole life
Yeah.
or all year if you ever decide to read books your whole life and write." And he was black like me, and it was crazy that he was thinking that way because when I was in that grade, I wasn't thinking about that.
Right.
Like reading and writing is like the only thing, but they have so much information to take from. And I feel like my job as a teacher is not to get them to just want to go to college. Because even when you go to college, you can also carry the burden of not gaining more knowledge and
Absolutely.
understanding of anything. So the thing is to get them to understand continuing learning. And that the only way you can continue to learn is that you read, write, and study.
Yeah.
That's the only way. So I never pressure a kid to be like, oh, you need to go to college, you need to go do this. No, you need to learn to read, write, and study.
Yeah.
Because if you can do all those three things, you can go to college and still do, do this, and this, but you can also build on your interests and your purposes
Yeah.
while you're there. Because college for me was like networking, big
Yeah.
time. And it might not be that way for everybody else. But what if it is?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
That's good.
yeah. And then there's a project that I was thinking about coming into the next year for my students. And it's about writing about how you got to where you are now. It'll make them think more. Like, how did I get here? What was I doing? What my family like? It goes back into your poem, the dysfunctional family. So it's like kids need to hear that.
100%.
And I don't know. I'll let you know about that. I think that'll be really good. You come see my students next year.
Man, I'm
And
more than happy to do that.
talk to them about like the poem, and we can dissect it, because I'm a word geography teacher, but those things do affect the outside world, your whole environment.
How old are they?
I would say like 14 to like 16
That's
in that area.
the great years. Yep.
But the biggest thing I want to talk about, since you are a sex coach, is like they don't have any sex education.
Right.
It's terrible. And then our counselors at the school, I'm not trying to bash any of them, but they don't have any knowledge of like giving sex education.
Right.
I wish that schools would give it more so students will understand, like, because they're going through a lot. Like puberty is like that thing, that chaos era for everybody who, had their first wet dream. I definitely did, and I was like so confused.
Yeah.
Didn't get the birds and bees talk, but I feel like if they do get that birds and bees talk, they'll understand more self-respect,
Right,
and self-love, rather than this chaos that goes on where kids are sitting news to each other and it just becomes a whole big thing. Like I said, man, the school environment is definitely can be chaotic, can be crazy. You can only pray and hope for a good day.
absolutely.
So
You know what's crazy? You just gave me confirmation to finish something I started.
yeah.
And it's his book for high schoolers. And the topic is I don't necessarily have a title, but it's everything I wish I was taught in high school. And it goes from all realms of the sexuality for men and women, what it means to have a period, what it means to have an erection, what it means to the breakdown of different kind of STDs that you can have.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, reading, the power of personal development, the power of spirituality, the power of friend groups, and stepping outside of your friend group.
Yes.
So all the things that I was never taught and wish I was taught in high school are the things that I have outlined in my book. And if you want me to come next year or even later this year, I'll make sure I have it done.
Okay, bet. That'd be a good end of the year guess.
Yes.
I think that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Because I think the thing is with teachers that we don't bring anybody local. They don't want to bring anybody local to actually speak to the kids, to actually like relate to them. But because I am an entrepreneur and then I'm a teacher as well, and I love being a teacher sometimes. God, I know 5 million I'll walk away today, unfortunately. But I do say this, like, the kids do need to see that. A lot of my kids are black or Hispanic. That's the ethnicity group that I'm dealing with. And I'm not gonna sit here and take my time out to talk about something I don't really specialize in.
Right.
I think that does a disservice. And I think it's very important to have locals come in that are entrepreneurs that need that talk about entrepreneurship, but also since they're kids about sex, because I don't like to ear hustle, but it's like that's just something I do because of the way I was raised in my environment, which is to pay attention to your surroundings.
Right.
Always be aware, no matter what it is, no matter who's around you, this, that, and the third. Like somebody could be behind me and I'll still be listening.
Right.
And I don't want to. And I hear about it, I'm like, man, why we don't have sex education or like health ed? Like they have PE, but they don't have that sex education, which is super important.
It's the most important thing.
Super important. I don't know if you watch Big Mouth.
And I've seen it once, but not a big
I
thing.
seen it and I was like, holy crap, dude. Like I can relate to it because it's like there's no sex education, but you have to think about it on your own. You have to go through it, figure out why is your body doing this? Why are you going through this? Why is your voice like going deep and
Projecting,
then
yeah.
so it's crazy. And I feel like it's very important. Now, um, before we end, I do want to say this. The program that's coming up,
hmm
when is it?
So April 15th
Okay.
is going to be the program. I'll have the flyer before the end of the month, but it's for men that need help getting unstuck, right?
Okay.
Maybe you're in a relationship, but you found ways to continue self-sabotaging.
Mm.
Maybe you haven't really identified your triggers. Maybe you want to build upon your emotional intelligence. Maybe you want to learn how to communicate more effectively, right? How to become more of a listener instead of a responder. How to
Yeah.
self-regulate yourself. How to become more aware of those things, and tapping into your purpose.
Okay.
So it's going to be a 6-week program. We'll meet once a week via Zoom, and if you're in person, definitely meet in person. You'll get a journal that's attached to it because there's going to be daily journaling, daily reflecting. That's going to be a part of it.
Uh,
And I'm only looking for 10 guys.
okay.
I'm only looking for 10 guys because I don't want this could be a really big thing, but I'm really huge on reflecting and responding. I'm really big on asking certain questions and having other people share their perspectives. And
Okay.
if you have a huge group, you have limited time, and you'll go over time. So
Okay.
we'll meet hour and a half at max 2 hours a week,
Mm.
and everybody will get a chance to talk, to be heard, to reflect, and then you'll have your own personal journal. And like I said, it'd be 6 weeks in and out.
Okay. You ain't got the price yet? You know how it
Yeah,
is.
it's gonna be $397.
Oh, man, that's nothing. 400, 500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
397. So
I was thinking. So price in my head was 500.
yeah, so
Yeah.
397. Now my thing is, I'm big on value,
Okay.
but I'm not big on busting heads, right? Because the men that I want to reach are the men that's still developing.
Okay.
They
Okay.
may not be fully into the career. Maybe they may have starting their family. Maybe whatever. I just want to give you the value,
Okay.
right? I want to build a relationship, give you the value, help you become a better man, and then through your testimony, I'll launch more stuff.
Well, I'm definitely I'm one of them guys. I'm not even gonna say I'm not. Even though I have my career and everything, I am in my preparation phase
Right.
where I'm like, okay, well, I got the finances. I'm doing better, but my emotional intelligence, I wouldn't just sit here and be like, oh yeah, it is good, it is what it is,
Right.
because I do have situations where I'm like, oh shoot, I'm reminded. I'm
Right.
like, yeah, you ain't who you think you talking about you are.
Right.
So it always comes to that self-awareness, like you said, where like I'm in a networking event and like I might get like a trigger. And I'm like, oh shoot,
Yeah.
something's off. But it's like that's something I'm not catering to in myself.
Right.
So I have to cater more and more. But I'm also like, the more I'm around the right people that actually want to do the same thing, it's kind of like your peer group. Like if
Yeah.
your peers doing it, you like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do
Absolutely.
it. So it always goes back to that, like you said, going outside the groups. Like kids need to understand that, like your peers are gonna change. Even I was like shocked. I was like, when I became an adult, I was like, I don't even talk to the same people no more. I do not talk to them. Like we might hit each other up every now and then, but we do not talk. So like understanding like networking is your net worth, but also you have to work to
Yeah.
get around those groups. Like it's not always about going to events for free. It's not always about doing it for money.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about that network or networking to create your net worth.
Yeah.
For me, net worth is more so about like just you yourself.
Yeah.
When they be like, how much is that person's net worth? And they say, oh, 54 million. That's because that person had to become that person and deal with
Absolutely.
that type of responsibility and accountability behind it. So
Yeah.
I'm always like, yeah, if you ain't got a journal, I don't know how you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Because your journal is like an accounting book. It's it's your ability to keep account of all the things that you've been through and where you're going.
Yeah.
If a man doesn't know where he's going, then how can a man think of what he is
Yeah.
and become what he think he
And how
is?
can he ever lead anybody?
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm definitely gonna be there. I have to be there because I'm like, man, personal development coach. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I was
Yeah.
also thinking like a business coach. But I was like,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter how many books you read. To me, well, for some people it does work, but for me, I'm pretty sure like yourself, because you got a personal development coach. It's like actually getting that help to actually stick with that personal development.
Yeah. Accountability.
Because the books is like, eh.
Yeah, you got two sides.
Yeah.
You have comprehension, then you have application.
Yeah.
I can read 1,000 books. I can
Mm-hmm.
go through 1,000 chapters. I can quote you back 1,000 things.
Yeah.
But if I'm not applying these things to my life, I'm wasting. I'm wasting the time that I read.
Mm.
Right? E.T. said one time, "I will rather you read one page 1,000 times than read 1,000 books."
Wow.
Simply because master the information that you're reading. Because if you're not mastering, not applying it, not using it, you're just a knowledge junkie. You're just a comprehension. Yeah, you're just comprehension junkie. So with that being the case, if you are reading, continue to read, continue to
Mm-hmm.
apply. You don't got to worry about reading 1,000 books.
Yeah.
One book is fine. Master the information that you're given in that book. Continue to develop because how much you develop is going to determine how much money you make. How
Yeah.
much you develop is going to determine how well of a communicator you are.
Yeah.
And if you can communicate, you can write books. You can become a speaker, and people will pay you for your gift.
Mm. Damn. Is that what ET said, or you said that?
No, that's just facts.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
just facts.
that is facts. But I was like, that would be something ET says.
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to EC since 2010, so
Yeah.
I can quote back a lot of his stuff. But yeah,
Dang. Okay. Yeah. I didn't get on ET until like I got through Les Brown. I don't know why. Like YouTube, like if you listen to Les Brown, it's gonna bring up ET. So that's what I
absolutely.
got into. But any questions you got for me
Um,
for the closing?
yeah, the last question I have for you is, what's next for you?
What's next? Dang, a lot of people ask me that. It's like, um, so I finally got my website up. I finally getting Mice Print to, stabilize it. I'm not trying to move too fast. I'm trying to be very, very patient. That's one thing I learned. I'm not very patient. Um, and get into public speaking.
Okay,
Just to like get better at it, because this helps me with public speaking, but also like to actually be in front of people and like spread the message. Like you said, like the information that I got, I don't want to just keep reading. I want to
right.
actually do it. And then personal development coach. And then I definitely want to go to your program.
Okay,
I'm
bet.
definitely interested in it. I feel like I'm gonna meet a lot of new people and network with a lot of people
Yes, sir.
and just grow. I mean, I gotta stop looking at my age. I'm like, I'm 28.
Yeah,
Now I
I'm
feel like the
28
end of
as
the
well.
world, but I'm like, I still got time.
Yeah,
I still got time. I feel like I have to look at it long term and then take care of my health in that same instant.
absolutely.
So
Okay, I'm proud of you, bro. I'm here to help you
thank
as
you,
much as I can.
thank you. Hey y'all, we out. Deuces.